Hello, welcome to Ayni Living Conversations 103rd emission of this beautiful, enlightening um, journey of discovery, of wisdom, of connection, of channeling. I am with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, who is our main sensei here at Aloha Ayni Dao Living. And I'm Julian Katari, um, her, her big helper and journey companion.
Yeah.
I'm living in Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico at the moment, and we're expecting a couple of live viewers. Um, the live viewers, let me tell you, Ingrid, that they're coming from the Na site, the New and Ancient Story.
Right. New and ancient. Wow.
I continue publishing there the event, and sometimes we
Wow.
get somebody that watches it and they have commented and had said some nice things about it. This lady said that she had watched it and enjoyed it, and then this other lady asked if there could be a participatory session. I said, yeah, sure. If we can get participants, we would certainly do something like that. So
Yeah, for
let's hope
sure.
they join, and if they want to throw a message or something.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool because at 103 weeks, 103 sessions, next week puts us at 104, which is 2 years. And it was Nash that started us, that started me, that sparked this and said, let's do this conversation, Julian.
oh, cool.
Yeah. It was our,
So yeah, it's still a place to cultivate, even though it's still kind of very few kind of people,
yeah.
and they are kind of on wanting to go on the path, but they're maybe a little bit shy yet.
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot more to learn, so that's what we're here for, to share more learning. Um, and today, then, let me introduce the subject, which I haven't yet, is the sacred geometry of the Vitruvian man. Everybody knows about the Vitruvian man, Leonardo da Vinci's sacred geometry study of the human body, and we're gonna go deeper as we like to do in Tiny Living Conversations. We go deeper into things, so we're gonna go deeper into that, and if it's needed, I am going to accompany with some. I have my whiteboard, and I can do some drawing if needed. If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
But, so let me get that ready. Getting that ready. So I'll let you take the lead, Ingrid, if you want to go right
Okay.
ahead.
So Da Vinci's Vitruvian man is us, right? So, um, we hear so much talk about ascension. We're leaving for the fifth dimension. Where I was raised Seventh-day Adventist and believe in the second coming. Jesus is coming to take us away. The other religions talk about the rapture, same thing. So as I've now come to understand it, our goal really as humans is not to leave our human body for the divine. Rather, it is to become more divine as humans, to bring the divine into us.
Okay,
Because,
big difference.
yeah, because we are of the earth and we are of divinity. So it's important to bring this into our body. So how do we have all these abstract concepts that really aren't so abstract because they come from our body, since we are the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Right.
So we'll go back to our creation story of Ishmukane, Laka, and Nugua. So as they started to sing, as they continue to sing, these holy beings were and still are physically and spiritually forming the world they inhabit. They started to plan, and they continue to plan, and then they prepare their environment by first creating everything spiritually. Thinking, singing, speaking it into existence is at the center of it all. Through words and songs, and by meshing myths and other physical elements, the first spiritual sparks or souls developed as the holy singing beings create all things animate and inanimate, and are still creating all things inanimate and animate. So as they create and they come into existence, they need physical bodies, forms, and locations to inhabit. So there is no place and nothing that does not receive an inner holy being, a Nawal.
Mm-hmm.
So as we started with the movement of Ishmukane in the place that where nothing is, and she started singing, that was the movement, right? That started the organ energy or the Reiki or the Chi or the breath of life, whatever you want to call it. That energy wave started. And then her two granddaughters, granddaughters, Laka and Nugua, came into being as the three sacred sparks that we've talked about. So now we have the sacred geometry of the Vesica Pisces. How do we locate these in our body? How do we locate the Vesica Pisces in our body?
Okay, Vesica Pisces, let me just say it's two circles kind of joining in, right?
Right, which makes the fish symbol, right? Or a kind of adulterated, distorted triangle. So we locate these with the three dantians. So we start our life, all of our lives start with a sperm and an ovum meeting and joining. So in that meeting and joining, we have the three dantians already. Dantian is a Chinese word that's translated to mean field of elixir, describing the seats of life force or organ energy in our body. Qi. They are believed to hold the three treasures or jewels or elixirs of our bodies, known in the Chinese as the Jing, Qi, and Shen, which also correspond with the three sparks that we've talked about. The blue spark, the fire or germ of will, intention to be. This is your upper dantian, the Shen, located in your pineal gland or brain, your seventh chakra, and also your eighth chakra. Shen is your spiritual power, your spirit. This is also your sacred dove, a sphere that reaches above your physical head like a halo that intersects all parts of us. This is the seat of our divinity and connects us with all other realms. So the second one, the red spark, the fire, the wisdom energy of love, passion, and desire, the middle dantian, the Qi, the Reiki, is our heart area. This is also known as our shining body or our aura, and the seat of our communication and intellect, of giving and receiving information rationally, energetically, and psychically. And then the third is the lower dantian, the Jing, the yellow spark or fire in our bellies, just below the navel. This is our discipline, our diligence, our active intelligence that makes waves of grace for the land and the people into 7 generations. This is the fire of actualization, of making real our passions, our desires. This is the Jing, also known as the sperm or ovary organ energy, the essence of our physical body. This can also be known as our sticky one. Closely follows our physical body, and it extends about 1 inch from our physical body. So we're like a tape. We're like a piece of tape with a sticky body. Comes, right? This is our child nature, our animal, our instincts, our immediacy of connections to food, sex, sleep, and exercise. And it fits us like a glove. This is the Vesica Pisces. It doesn't seem like a triangle in us. It seems like a straight line, right? But remember, we're all folded up till we emerge from our mother's body. So, as the holy ones continue singing and expanding, they emplace lots of blessings, bringing us to the great cross, the cross of life. And on this cross hangs the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the points of our days and our years, and the life pulsation, the life-giving pulsation of organ energy, which is a 4-beat count. So days and months, moons and years, these are the blank pages of our lives. For eons, our planet has spun on her axis and revolved around grandfather sun, giving us the daily rhythm and the much larger rhythm of this year, the solar year. In between, grandmother moon gives us a rhythm 13 times in every larger sun cycle to practice embodying this great cross. These rhythms have shaped the one-cell amoebas, evolving and growing us into multicellular unities, and this rhythm pulses within not only us, it pulses in everything in our more than human life world. So let's talk again briefly about this pulsing of this orgone energy, the orgasmic potential, the chi, the reiki, the life force, the breath of life. So first we have the spark that lights the flame of that creates tension, giving us the balloon full of charge, right? That wants to burst. And then we have the discharge, and then we have the relaxation. So we have the spark, midnight, the winter solstice, the winter, the north direction for us in the northern hemisphere, and the new moon. 13 times a year we have this spark. It builds and grows, the flame of tension full of charge with the sunrise, the vernal equinox, the spring, the east, the first quarter moon. The discharge is the high noon of our days, the summer solstice, the summer season, and the full moon. The relaxation is the sundown, the fall, the west, the fall season, the west direction, and the third quarter moon. So to the east, the holy ones put the dawn, representing elements of the morning, a new beginning, morning flowers and bird calls heard only during that part of the day. Critical thinking is part of the power of the east. And as the holy ones sang about the south and the blue world, and every culture, every indigenous ancient culture has their own color scheme to go with this. So right now we're drawing from the Dene, the Navajo. They thought of bluebirds, blue flowers, blue spruce, turquoise, and all things blue. So the south would be important for the planting of crops and of life, where skills, work, and focused thought should exist. So then to the west, the holy ones sang about families, relationships, and how each should function. And to the north, thunderstorms, rain, snow, and darkness. Yeah, but with these things that seem not so nice, there's still wonderful benefits, like the night that gives us pleasant sleep and rebirths us every day, and the winter that rebirths our world every year. Mm-hmm. So once the holy beings started singing and putting these qualities in place, it caused all, as a golden spiral swirls out, to become wider, bigger, and more distant. We also need to see each of these geometrical symbols surrounded by a circle, the space that contains the geometry, but yet we tend to think that this circle is it, forgetting that each symbol doesn't end at that circle. It simply radiates and transmits beyond the boundaries of the circle to participate in the movement and the singing of the spiraling out. So as the holy ones continue to sing and expand, it brings us to the pentacle, the five-pointed star, and the phases of creation, the five directions, which always brings us to the center, to the within. Mm-hmm. So then, what comes next? If we're counting, we go to the 6. Mm-hmm. If we go by the golden spiral, we jump to the 8. So let's, which would be the octagon, which comes next in the golden spiral. Hold on just a minute, sorry. Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we investigate the octagon, let's leave that for next week. Let's look at what the spiral just skipped across, which would be the hectagon, the snowflake. Water or water vapor molecules attach to a dust particle and form the beginnings of a snowflake. These molecules crystallize to a hexagonal plate form, and every snowflake is formed around this shape. Every snowflake will have a repeated hexagon design, but each snowflake will be slightly different. Why a hexagon? Funny, isn't it? Why not another shape other than the hexagon? Six-sided shape. Well, a hexagon is a 2D shape with 6 sides, and Johannes Kepler wondered the same thing. He was a German mathematician and astronomer in the 17th century. He wondered why the hexagon is the underlying form for snowflake and not another shape. And he proposed that it would be something to do with the hexagon being one of only 3 shapes that can fill a 2D surface without gaps. The other 2 are the triangle and the square. So a hexagonal plate is the beginning of every snowflake, and as it grows, the water available becomes less able to fill all the space, and so branches and tendrils appear, always on a 6-fold pattern, which we recognize as snowflakes that we like to create with our kids, right? Interesting. So according to the Dene philosophy, they have 6 sacred mountains, and their hogans get 6 foundational poles, 1 for each direction and 2 at the entrance of the house, giving us the 6.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
The hogan, right?
The hogan. Yeah. And depending on whether it's male or female, if it's male, it's more of a cone shaped. If it's a female hogan, it's a round.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the 6. Let's go skip out to the 7. What significance does the 7 has? Well, we all kind of get stuck on 7 as saying that there's 7 days in a week. However, we have to remember that the week is created by man. There's no weeks in nature, none. And you could say, well, but there's 4 quarters of a moon, so 7 days in each moon. And I'm going to have to say, no, that doesn't work, because I've been watching Grandmother Moon for over 1,000 days now, and her days stretch and they shorten, and they stretch and they shorten. So while there might be 29 days or 28 days, it's never exactly 7, right? So so in the medicine wheel of life, how do we get the 7? How do we bring the 7? Well, we add 2 dimensions. We add the above and below, giving us a 7-dimensional life. And so then as the old ones, the holy ones, keep singing, from the 5 to the 8, we end up with the Bagua. We come to the Bagua, or the octagon, and we'll explore that briefly, but we'll go into that further next week. It's a powerful symbol and sacred geometry, and it is believed to represent balance, harmony, and transformation. Its symmetry and unique properties make it an intriguing shape to explore. We find the octagon in various forms in nature, such as the shape of certain crystals, the arrangement of flower petals, and the structure of certain organisms. For example, the octopus has 8 arms, right? Approximates an octagon. So let's start there. Let's stop there and shift into talking about the shadow, because everything has a shadow. And we're going to delve deeper into the octagon and talk further about the singing of the holy ones as they continue to spiral into the TP, the 13 section pie. But we'll address that next week.
Okay. The shadows.
The Telecena. I was wondering how I was going to marry that into all of this. And then there's the TP has the 13 poles. So we'll still I still need inspiration on that. That's why we stopped with the octagon, because I need time for the holy ones to sing this inspiration into me.
Okay.
So let's totally shift from sacred geometry. So we're leaving the hexagon and the octagon that are in us. And before we leave the octagon, we'll touch briefly on our talk about embryology, where there's 8 metabolic fields that work from the outside to form us as these. So I would say up until the 8, we have the vesica Pisces, the triangle, the great cross, the pentagram, working from the inside, pushing out against the 8 forces that exert their pressure inward, giving us the growing embryo of all species. So, and then that shadow of that embryo, we'll now talk about the shadow. So we're going to imagine here. Imagine yourself walking south along a faint deer trail, brushing past spruce boughs and ducking the low, brittle limbs of firs. The landscape now shifts into a grove of whispering aspens, tall, sun-dappled trunks like elegant giraffe necks leaning this way and that, with their heads hidden among the leaves. Your legs carry you upslope through darker needle limbs and then down again as the trail opens abruptly into the eastern shores of a mountain lake. So you keep walking, and to your right, the skin of the Tarn. A Tarn is a small mountain lake. The skin of the Tarn ripples with a dazzle of sunlight, suffusing the air with reflected rays, like an army of swords flourishing aloft their gleams, passing through one another, cleaving the depth between you and the rock ridge slopes rising from its opposite shore. So it's, with all this dazzling beauty, it's really hard to see clearly the grand mountain toward which those ridges on the opposite shore ascend, or the trees clustered on those slopes. Your eyes feel only a vague imitation of green behind this exaltation of light. As you stand there and enveloped in this exaltation of light, you hear the cry of a red-tailed hawk echoing off the rock faces, and then just gleaming silence. The silence is not perfect, because now and then the faint papery rattle of a dragonfly sounds near the lake surface. There's also the suspicion of leaves scattered and rocking on the water, though your eyes can hardly focus on them among all the shifting rays of light. To your left, however, your gaze easily marshals itself, and here the spruce trunks are etched by the sun, streaming through their needles. The bark illumines so crisply that you can feel the texture of their scabbed and shingled surfaces as your eyes move among their trunks, their bodies, translating patterned light into tactile sensations that ride along your skin. The afternoon light, like the aspen leaves, is slowly deepening into gold, and soon there's a gilt edge to the grasses and the stones underfoot. Mosquitoes dance above the water, and bees swerve past you, drawn to the color of your shirt or the scent of your sweat as you make your way past broad rocks that have been drinking the sun all afternoon. And you keep hiking. This air is thick with light, an enveloping spell, a trance into which the whole place has now fallen, a viscous state of mind shared by you and the spruces and the bees in this honeyed moment. And then something shifts. A chill breeze against your face draws you to a different awareness. A swift glance around reveals that the sun is now perched like a kingfisher upon the high ridge of the mountain. Stillness everywhere, as though the world itself teeters on the edge. A great transformation is afoot. The breeze stirs, and then it falls silent. Everyone, the dragonflies, the dangling needles, the stones and the boulders, scattered along the shore, every entity seems to be holding its breath. The radiant eye of the kingfisher sun still watches, but its stare is steadily growing less intense. And everything is waiting on the quiet metamorphosis now spreading towards you from across the lake. The sun Kingfisher's gaze grows fainter still, and soon it's possible to stare back at it without wincing as it slowly slips behind the ridge. A final glare, a flaring gleam between two trees silhouetted on that ridge, and then grandfather's sun is gone. It's cooler now, to be sure, but it's not just cooler. There's a new texture to the air, a moistness, water suspended in the medium, unseen, though you can feel its presence as the air washes against your face in waves. And riding those waves, vaguely enticing at first, then too pleasureful to resist, are smells. Dark, Stygian smells sliding over the rippled glass of the lake to mingle with the aromatic dank soil underfoot and the high-pitched scent of the green needles, and a faintly fermented fragrance prying open your nostrils, which would be the recent scat of some creature still steaming in the near woods. There's also the moist decay of a collapsed trunk and the laughing scent of cool water lapping against the shore that's infused with the chemistry of tadpoles and trout and the tannin of drowned leaves. And a host of other whiffs, sometimes merged and sometimes distinct, all sparkling like wine in some part of your brain that had been earlier rocked to sleep by the soporific dazzle of sunbeams. And now this part of your brain has been startled into attentive light by the more full-blooded magic, as though your mammalian intelligence has abruptly dropped anchor. And suddenly you've found yourself here, afoot in these damp woods. The celestial daze that you've been drifting in has now receded to the far periphery of your awareness, the last trace of those ethereal phantasms fading before the robust breath of those deeper colors and obscene odors, powers whose pungency echoes the sweat and strength of your legs as they push one after the other against the ground. In company with the clump grasses and the frogs, you have crossed a threshold whose influence, though unacknowledged in the current area, remains as potent as ever. And so you have slipped into a different realm, different mindscape. You have entered the country of shadow. And the vast, brooding presence that had been hiding moments earlier in the gauze of light is now slowly walking toward you through the clarified air. It is the breathing body of the mountain itself. One of the marks of our obliviousness, one of the countless signs that our thinking minds have grown estranged from the intelligence of our sensing bodies, is that today we all seem to believe that shadows are flat, just like we believe that the earth is flat. If you're walking down a city street on a cloudless day and notice a shape-shifting patch of darkness accompanying you, splayed out on the road perpendicular to your upright self, its appendages stretching and shrinking with the swinging of your limbs, you instantly identify this horizontal swath as your shadow. But you think it's flat. You think it's a kinetic pancake, this creature of two dimensions, whom you might be able to peel off the street and drape over the nearest telephone wire. Your shadow's actually an enigma, much more substantial than that flat shadow on the paved ground. That silhouette is only your shadow's most outermost surface. The actual shadow does not reside primarily on the ground. It's the voluminous being of thickness and depth, a mostly unseen presence that dwells in the air between your body and the ground. Your living shadow is born afresh every dawn, or rather, the shadow is what remains of the night, as the night's gloom flees the advancing of grandfather's rising. So now you're imagining yourself standing in the yard at dawn, facing away from the sunrise. And you'll see that as the night slips away, it leaves behind a slender part of itself, a splinter of dusk reaching from your body to the western horizon. A piece of night that detaches from the mother darkness, gradually gathering around the spot where you're standing. This shard of residual night draws in closer to you throughout the morning. Its visible edge on the ground slowly congeals, its limbs widening until you can see the proportions. That is a clear echo of yourself. So you mimic each other's movements across the umbral realm that stretches between you. So if you keep watching, toward noon, that you'll notice that your shadow seems to be seeping into your flesh. By midday, it's been almost entirely absorbed through the pores of your skin, and apart from a smidgen of shade on your northern flank, it's nowhere to be seen. The shadow, your personal night, has been enfolded within you. It has become indistinguishable from you. Do you notice this? Do you feel different at high noon when the darkness has seeped into you? Do you feel the weight of the shadow against the inside of your torso and skull? It's a small wonder that so many traditional peoples give themselves over to siesta and sleep for an hour or two at this time, letting their tissues and organs respond to the interior visitation by the night, allowing the many calls or souls within them to be tutored by the darkness that has taken temporary refuge in their flesh. So as the day waxes on or wanes on, you feel the quiet release of your shadow as it slips from the confines of your skin and slides its fingers ever so gently into the afternoon air. And as the afternoon turns into late evening, you see your shadow flexion. A slender giant honed like a sword lies prone in the evening golden light. And as grandfather sun sinks, the giant elongates. Then it becomes bird-like. All the wings calling and chattering as the giant's contours become blurred, indistinct, granting his penumbral powers to the dusk and the oncoming night. So do our shadows dissolve and dissipate? Or are they still hidden, swallowed within the deeper, wider shade of the evening? Or is the evening itself nothing other than a garment woven from all our disparate shadows, from those separate darknesses that walk on their own during the day, yet gather themselves into common thickness as grandfather sun slides behind the trees and the hills, if there's hills around you, and the houses and the city? So for a moment, let's investigate this. The shadow, this elegant enigma, is always with us. Whether at high noon or at midnight, whether it stands quiet in our skin or envelops us as our milieu, the shadow is an inescapable consequence of our physicality. It's a disruption of the sun's dominion, a disturbing power that we hold in common with boulders and storm clouds and the corpses of crashed airplanes. There do exist a few members of the bodily community that thrive without the dark companionship of shadows. The various winds, for example, or the pane of glass newly set within a window frame. But for the vast majority of us material beings, the shadow is part of our makeup. So now we're returning to the mountain lake where you have a fishing rod and you hear, and it's in the water. Your fishing line is in the water. Bloop! The mouth of a trout breaks near the surface of the pond, snatching a fly and sinking back into the green depths. Ripples radiate out from that intersection of worlds, jostling the water striders and the few floating leaves. Stepping close to the edge, you peer through the murk to glimpse any fish that might be visible. And a twig snaps under your foot, followed by a faint thump, 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 thump of hooves bounding off into the needle distance. This is a vibration felt more by your torso than heard by your ears. You walk more candidly now, glancing down to avoid the exposed roots and angled haphazard rocks with pointillist black and crinkly orange lichens spreading across their mottled facets. Cool air laced with amphibious exhalation slides down the back of your throat. The center of beaver gnawed saplings seeps into your brain as another trout breaks the surface. The water striders rock back and forth on the undulations of the waves of the Tarn. Earlier, the sun was gazing down upon this world, its warmth meeting the inner flame of the grasses, its beams ricocheting off the cliffs and the shifting mirror of the lake. Everything here stood in relation to that white fire as you walked in the dazzle of the gleams. Your thoughts are lured aloft by the royal request pouring down from the sky. And again, we're in the evening, so that celestial imperative has withdrawn behind the mountain. and each thing's attention seems wholly taken by the life that surrounds it. A spider sussing the breeze that's billowing her web, waiting for a more adept tug. The stones hunkering close to the soil. The wind licking the water as it glides over the lake, sliding under roots and through striated furrows in the bark of these trunks, while needles comb the invisible rush. Eyes inhale colors, and your body responds to the pigments of the lichen and fungi and cliff with your own ruddy colors, with the hue of your skin and your sweat-stained shirt, the dark undertones of your matted hair. For there's an intimacy here that includes you. It is commonality that you really notice only when your eyes are turned skyward, high overhead. Two ducks flapping southward, their feathers agleam in the sunlight, are clearly of another world. They fly in the full gaze of Grandfather Sun. You realize then that the convivial intimacy of this shadowed world does not extend indefinitely upward. It's a bounded realm, a zone that breaks off at some distance overhead, where the sunlight spills over the mountain ridge and illuminates the upper air. Down here, however, we dwell in a different medium, in the coolness and clarity of shadow. A shared influence is apparent among the many beings of this bounded realm. The manner in which colors, sounds, and tastes all step forward into your presence. The way those robust qualities confer and converse with your body, informing your limbs. For instance, about the waterlogged branches that now dream at the bottom of the lake. All this is a gift afforded by the sheltering shade of the mountain. It is that hulking presence, the many-folded mountain rising in wooded slopes and cliffed ridges from the far shore of the lake, scraped by glaciers and worn down by the winds, laden with ice in its high concavities and layered with stories among every rockslide and precipice. It is the mountain that lends its gregarious power to the multiple elements of this place. Whether or not you notice its active influence, it is the mountain that defines the mood of the moment where you stand. To step into the shadow of this mountain is to step directly under the mountain's influence, letting it untangle your senses as the rhythm of your breath adjusts to its breathing, to the style of its weather. To step into its shadow is to become part of, if only for this moment, of the mountain's life. Just as shadows are not flat shapes projected upon the ground, but rather dense and voluminous spaces. Neither are they measurable quantities, mere consequences of sunlight and its interruption. And all this is kind of important as we're coming up on a annular solar eclipse, right? Because it's all about shadows. The eclipse is all about shadows. So shadows are qualitative attributes of the bodies that secrete them. They are time-dependent realms that change their contours with the hour and the season. Momentary life zones where the shadow-casting mountain or boulder or body quietly envelops and gathers a range of other bodies under its sway. The shadow is bound at space and time, whereas the mountain is free to spread out of itself, making itself felt in all its unadored frankness, drawing a cluster of other entities and elements into a common neighborhood, a zone of alliances and reciprocities enabled by the quiet shelter of the mountain's shade. The power of the shadow is like the action of a benevolent monarch who sets aside the gilt robe that he displays every day to the eyes of the world, donning some drab clothes and slipping out the back door of the palace to wander in the surrounding neighborhood as his own honest, simple self. Despite his humble garb, the commoner sense his charisma and fall under the orbit of his royal bearing, and hence a new camaraderie emerges among them if it's only for a few hours. So to find oneself in the shadow of a mountain, or a tree, or a big rock, or someone else, another human being, is to find oneself exposed to the private life of that being, to feel its huge and manifold influence on the local world that lies beneath it. to enter the gravitational power of its intelligence, a sagacity no longer dissolved in the dazzling radiance of the sun. Yet the shadows of the late afternoon are very different from those of the early morning. The mood, the mode of its awareness, the qualities imparted are all richly different. And once again, we're talking about the shadow of the mountain. So the breeze is dying down, and then ephemeral mist is gathering just above the lake surface. Wisps of vapor hover and drift like spirits. The silence is deeper. A tiny splash sounds now and then, yet no longer the rattle of dragonfly wings or the chittering call of squirrels. The trunks and the cliffs are darkening. The needles are losing their distinctness. The shadow of the mountain, this vibrant life zone, is giving way to a power still vaster, darker, and more profound. The myriad flows between insects and grass, between soil and stone, hawk and water and cliff, seem to be dissipating. The reciprocities and negotiations between neighbors all gradually subsiding. Yeah, there's still encounters and exchanges, yet they no longer compose a tightly woven web. They seem more random. The inhabitants of this place by the mountain are no longer so intimately engaged with one another, for the mountain's shadow is opening outward, losing its boundaries. And as the long hidden sun withdraws even its residual and scattered light from the sky, the mountain is taken up within the oncoming night. Its shadow is now swallowed by the darker shadow of Mother Earth. Night is the name we give to the shadow of our earth, the shadow that eats all other shadows. Slowly, our wide planet rolls between our animal bodies and grandfather sun. Outlines blur, shapes and colors become uncertain, and the proximate world loses its stark reality, while a new depth, gentle and beckoning at first, begins to disclose itself above the trees. A few specks of light appear in the thickening blue like wood fires in a far below valley. The bottom land of that valley soon gives way to a deeper canyon, and then a chasm, and then a fathomless abyss. Its immeasurable distances are lit by 1,000 or 10,000 glimmering stars. And just as the shadow cast by the mountain, when we step within its bounds, opens us to the brooding intelligence of the mountain, so the mammoth shadow of our earth, as it overtakes us, carries us out of ourselves into her own awareness. She opens us to those beings, daily obscured by the sun-drenched atmosphere, who nevertheless populate the broad expanse that our earth inhabits, the sibling planets with whom it shares the sun's house, and the countless other homes, some relatively near, some far off, that nevertheless compose with us the local neighborhood of the infinite, the singing holy ones. Or maybe we should speak of those sparkling lights as bodies, solitary yet exuberant lives who communicate via electromagnetic pulses across the inexhaustible deep, bending the fabric of space and time around themselves. Have our own bodies now shrunk to the scale of dust grains, and are those stars fresh dewdrops on a cluster of webs being spun by a nest of spiders? The limitless immensity to which our eyes are now exposed makes us dizzy and drunk with the pleasure of having our minds confounded and our ready logics exploded into an array of sparks scattered across the ocean of night. Such ecstasies are not easy for us to stand for very long. Our habits of thought call us back to more familiar harbors. Perhaps if we were birds and space was our medium, then this immensity would not throw us. Or if we were a different mammal, a fox, for instance, our nose would be only tuned to the smells that drift in ribbons along the ground. Then we'd hardly notice that alluring openness overhead, and night would be a boon for us because the drifting ribbons of smell would become so much more potent. But since we balance on just two legs, our heads held already in the sky, we can't avoid the stunning puzzle posed by the stars. Beyond a certain degree of astonishing gawking, our necks begin to hurt and our legs buckle. Our bodies long to lie horizontal with the earth. So we lend ourselves to gravity, becoming adjuncts of the ground itself. Only by thus renouncing the vertical stance and dropping away our upright individuality, leaning back upon Mother Earth, letting our gaze become the gaze of the earth itself, do we make some sense of the endless depths in which our earth dwells. These depths are not our habitat, they are Mother Earth's, Gaia's. And so it's only by unfurling our limbs and settling back into the body of earth that the night sky becomes for us a steady comfort and a womb. Such, then, is a spell that the shadow of this planet casts upon our flesh. Sooner or later, we lie down, and eventually our eyes close, and we feed our lives, individual lives, back into the wider field, the wider life of the ground itself, and we sleep. We sleep, allowing gravity to hold us, allowing Earth, our larger body, to recalibrate our neurons, composting the keen encounters of our waking days, the tensions and the terrors of our individual days, stirring them back as dreams into the sleeping substance of our muscles. We give ourselves over to the influence of the breathing earth. Sleep, some might say, is a habit born in our bodies as the earth comes between our bodies and grandfather sun. Sleep is a shadow of our Mother Earth as it falls across our awareness. To the human animal, sleep is the shadow of our earth as she seeps into our skin and spreads throughout our limbs, dissolving our individual will into the 1,001 cells that compose her, cells, tissues, and organs, taking their prime directives now from the gravity and wind as residual bits of sunlight caught in the tangle of nerves. Wander the drifting landscape of our earth, foreign bodies like deer moving across the forested valleys. And I wanted to weave in something about the shadow of the moon, but that escapes me. The shadow of Grandmother Moon as we're coming up to this annular solar eclipse with the full moon. But we are going to absorb the full depth of Grandmother Moon into us, whether we're in the direct path. Those who are in the direct path of the annular solar eclipse more so than others.
Do you know where it's going to be?
Oregon down, across Texas. It's going to miss you. It goes across the Gulf.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole new way to look at the shadow.
Oh yeah, so special. You know, we were talking about the tonali being the light,
right?
The energy, and nawali being the darkness. But then you would say, so it's not nawali the shadow, and it's not, because there's a word for shadow that's sewali. It's the word for shadow, sewali.
Sewali.
Yeah. And it's a different thing. It's not, nawali is not the shadow. So.
Right. Yeah.
I'm very grateful that this conversation came along. I mean, my heart feels good that to listen something so extensive about the shadow, you know, the shadow being also forgotten, and we pay so little attention to it, yet it's a big thing in the native shamanic world, and in the Toltec and Mexica traditions. It's a big thing.
It's an abstract thing too, right? We all talk about this abstract concept of our shadow world. And this is what I said at the beginning. We're not here. Each one of us is a facet of the holy beings having an experience. We're responsible for this experience. So we're responsible for feeling it, living it fully. Yet we take all these concepts and these abstract ideas, and we talk about we got to do our shadow work. We got to get rid of the shadow. We've got to incorporate it into ourselves. Well, yeah, it incorporates for a brief moment every day at high noon, middle of the day, and then it comes back out on the other side. So the shadow is always present. So that's why this was so profound to me.
Mhm. It is. It
To
is really
share this,
profound.
right? Because we also don't think about when we stand in the shadow of a tree that we're taking that tree's essence into us too through the shadow.
Mhm.
And here it's so amazing that we cut down trees so readily to not give our houses any shadow.
And why would you do that though?
Are we afraid of the shadow?
Yeah.
We must be. We
Well,
must really be.
in some places they do it. I mean, if you have too many trees in the tropical humid forests, if you have too many trees on top of your house, you're just gonna be extremely. I mean, you need some sun to hit your house
Oh,
in
yeah,
order to get
no, absolutely.
some
But I'm
health.
talking about clear cutting.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I have only one tree on the north side of my house. Only one tree,
Hmm.
lending its shade, lending its shadow to help cool us off. Right. And that's everywhere you go through Oklahoma, not just Oklahoma, but every state. You see all these fields cleared, no trees. No trees, and the big ass house stands there paying thousands of dollars a month in electrical bills because they will not allow the shade of trees
Yeah.
to cool them off. They will
Yeah.
not allow that thick energy, that viscous energy of the shadow of trees to imbue them with life.
Right. It's so funny.
It is very funny.
And you know, in the here in the tropics, outside the cities, in the country, in the rural areas, and the indigenous people, one of the favorite things that I mean, if you ask like a woman from the rainforest, what's the one of her favorite things, and she'll say the shadow of the tree. That's like one of the
That's
like the
interesting.
nicest things you can ever enjoy is the shadow. Like that's like their thing, you know, going out and enjoying having a ranch where you are your house is has a lot of shadows from the trees, a lot of shade. That's you're like that's paradise right there. Because anywhere else, it's too hot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so paradise is having trees on your house.
It would definitely make my house a much more for sure.
Well, you're going there with all those trees you got and all those saplings that
Yeah,
you got, and they're coming up
yeah,
and they're getting our attention, and they are gonna be very happy trees.
yeah.
Alrighty, so are we wrapped with this
Yeah,
conversation?
we're done. We're done for tonight.
So next week, more Vitruvian or
Yeah,
more sacred
more
geometry is gonna
more
come.
geometry. We're gonna return to the octagon,
Okay.
uh, and then we'll go on into the. There is no 13-sided shape that I know of, but the 13 is the next movement out of the spiral. So that's important. Um, and as I said today, I found that the teepees have 13 poles. So there's our sacred geometry as a teepee.
Okay. Alrighty. So we'll have that ready for everyone next week. An invitation half an hour earlier than we were having. So it's 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Aloha Ayni Living is our channels, website, social media, and everything else. If you wish to participate and get involved, and we'll leave it with that. Leave the invitation open.
And there'll probably be something more. I'm not sure what it'll be yet. I'll let you know in the next couple of days. We might start delving into the 4 agreements, the 5 agreements.
Okay, okay, yeah. That's really good to be working on
So,
that together and sharing it. That's
yeah,
what we do here. We share as we. There's no acting here. Everything's real. Everything's happening.
right.
And everything is manifesting as we share all this information. It's magically happening and weaving itself into reality, into our living in Ayni.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna end the transmission then.
Okay.